Long-distance precision calibers live in their own league. They're built for repeatable accuracy, hunting, competition, tactical work. These are the kinds of rounds that let you connect way out there. Less bullet drop, less wind drift, more energy staying on target. What's up, everybody? I'm Tommy here from the Armory. Today I'm breaking down the most accurate long-range precision calibers you should seriously try in 2026. Before we jump in, quick plug, hit like, hit subscribe, hit every button you see down there. Drop a comment too. I know it feels like extra work, but that engagement is what keeps the channel alive. All right, back to the good stuff. I get it if you're not super familiar with 6.8 Western. A lot of folks still aren't. After all, Winchester Repeating Arms and Browning Arms Company only rolled it out in 2021. But it's already picked up momentum with long-range shooters and hunters, because the accuracy at extended distance is, honestly, kind of ridiculous. And that performance isn't magic, it's design. Unlike a bunch of older long-range options, 6.8 Western is set up to run heavy for caliber bullets with high ballistic coefficients. That's the whole secret sauce of why this cartridge feels different in a good way. For example, a 165 grain AccuBond LR load typically runs about 2,970 feet per second at the muzzle, and it generates around 3,226 foot-pounds of energy. I also ran 170 grain ballistic silver tip bullets, and I recorded about 2,920 feet per second at the muzzle, with roughly 3,218 foot-pounds of energy. And yeah, those numbers are basically right there with what the 150 grain AccuBond LR can do. Still, the takeaway is simple. 6.8 Western is scary consistent. Here's a practical picture. If you zero at 3 inches high at 100 yards, 6.8 Western with a 170 grain ballistic silver tip drops about 4 inches at 300 yards. At 600 yards, it's still carrying about 1,500 foot-pounds of energy, with a drop around 54 inches. Those numbers are clean, especially when you stack them against other long-distance rounds. For comparison, a 270 Winchester with a 130 grain bullet holds about 1,500 foot-pounds at the same distance. A 300 Winchester Magnum with a 180 grain bullet holds around 1,200 foot-pounds. So pound for pound, 6.8 Western isn't just a strong shooter, it's also ultra-precise. 300 Precision Rifle Cartridge, or 300 PRC, is one of the go-to calibers for long-range precision work. And there's a reason for that. It was built specifically to stay accurate at distances other calibers just can't reliably cover. That comes down to careful engineering and strong ballistic performance. One factor I'm convinced helps the precision is the cartridge's tight freebore diameter, about 0.3088 inches. That tight spec helps the bullet line up with the bore more consistently, meaning less chance of yaw before the bullet ever grabs rifling, and you can't shrug that off. That alignment matters when you're trying to keep stability and accuracy all the way through flight. Put it next to something traditional like 300 Winchester Magnum. That round often runs a larger freebore diameter, around 0.315 inches. It's not bad, but a little more room can mean a little more misalignment, and that can shave off accuracy, especially at distance. Now let's talk real performance. When I ran Hornady 225 grain ELD match factory ammo, I got impressive results beyond 1,600 yards. At 1,600 yards, I was ringing a 32-inch circular steel target. Hit rate was somewhere in that 60 to 70% window. That's a rough estimate, but it's in that neighborhood. That's the cartridge proving it can hold accuracy over serious distance. At 1,000 yards, 300 PRC with a 225 grain ELD match needed about 25 minutes of angle of elevation, and that pretty clearly shows the flat trajectory and the consistency it can deliver. 6.5 Precision Rifle Cartridge, or 6.5 PRC, has absolutely earned its spot as a top-tier long-range accuracy choice, and it's not just me saying it. Anybody who's actually spent time behind glass at distance knows what this thing can do. Here's an example. With a 143 grain ELDX bullet moving around 2,900 feet per second, 6.5 PRC shows about a 23.07 inch drop at 400 yards. That beats the .308 Winchester. and it runs close to what 7mm Remington Magnum can do, with that one showing about a 22.48-inch drop. Past 400 yards, wind starts telling the truth. In a 10-mile-per-hour crosswind, 6.5 PRC drifts about 7.18 inches. That's noticeably less than the 308 Winchester at 10.27 inches, and less than 7mm Remington Magnum at 8.75 inches. And keep in mind, those numbers come from real testing. Stretch it farther, 6.5 PRC keeps showing off. At 1,000 yards with something like 140 grain VLD loads, it holds about 1,643 feet per second, with about 258 inches of drop. Now compare that to 300 Winchester Magnum, firing 200 grain ELDX bullets at around 2,850 feet per second. It holds about 1,456 feet per second, and it drops about 300 inches at 1,000. So the message is clear. 6.5 PRC carries more speed and stays flatter at distance than some heavier hitters. And that's why it's a current favorite for precision shooters and hardcore hunters. 7mm precision rifle cartridge has gotten popular fast with long-range folks because it blends accuracy and ballistic performance in a way that's hard to ignore. Hornady introduced it in 2022, so yeah, it's still pretty fresh. But it was purpose-built to push high ballistic coefficient bullets, and to do it with consistency at extended range. One of the biggest traits of 7mm PRC is how well it handles heavy for caliber, high BC projectiles, like Hornady 180 grain ELD match and 175 grain ELDX. Those bullets are made to cut air better and hold velocity longer. That means flatter trajectories and less wind drift. For instance, out of a 24-inch barrel, the 180 grain ELD match runs about 2,950 feet per second, with a G1 ballistic coefficient around 0.796. Even if you don't live in the numbers, those stats are basically screaming that it holds speed and energy way out there. And even though it's newer, the accuracy is already showing up in evaluations. At 100 yards, 5-shot groups using Hornady factory 180 grain ELD match ammo average sub-MOA. Some groups tighten up to about 0.58 inches. At distance like 1,000 yards, the cartridge can still hold consistent sub-MOA groupings. Bullet drop sits around 5.94 milliradians, and the 180 grain ELD match can maintain about 2,120 feet per second, with roughly 1,794 foot-pounds of energy at that range. Also, 7mm PRC runs a flatter trajectory than a lot of other Magnum cartridges, with less than 20 inches of drop at 400 yards. That is exactly what reliable precision at long range is supposed to look like. 6.5 Creedmoor is one of the most accurate long-range cartridges out there. Period. It's earned that reputation because the accuracy is real and the ballistics work at distance. Hornady developed it in 2007. And the whole point was better precision farther out. One big reason it shoots so well is bullet selection. It can run high ballistic coefficient bullets that hold velocity and fight wind drift. And you don't need some exotic load to see it. A pretty typical 140 grain 6.5 bullet can hit a ballistic coefficient around 0.6. That translates to strong energy retention and stable flight at distance. And it reduces how much wind and other conditions throw you around. So you get tighter groups. More repeatable shot placement. But that's not the only benefit. What I personally love about 6.5 Creedmoor is the moderate recoil. It lets you stay in control and keep good follow-through. Low recoil helps stability, and stability helps accuracy. On top of that, the case design is built around efficient powder burn and consistent muzzle velocity. And that's a big part of why it's considered inherently accurate. Now, the performance difference compared to something like 308 Winchester is well documented. On my last run with this cartridge, I averaged about a 0.9-inch 5-shot group at 100 yards. In contrast, rifles chambered in 6.5 Creedmoor averaged about 1.9-inch groups under those same conditions. At 1,000 yards, 6.5 Creedmoor sees around 76 inches of wind deflection. 308 Winchester is closer to 101 inches. That's a loud sign it's less vulnerable to wind drift, and that helps you keep your impacts where they belong. I'd be doing this list dirty if I left out 338 Lapua Magnum. If you've ever sent a few rounds of Lapua downrange, you already know why it's here. 338 Lapua Magnum is one of the most accurate serious distance calibers on the planet, and that's even more impressive when you remember what it was built for. Back in the 1980s, it was designed to bridge the gap between traditional sniper cartridges and bigger stuff like 50 BMG, so you get a balanced package. Power, range, precision. A big part of the accuracy comes from what it can launch. High ballistic coefficient bullets at substantial velocity. That combination means flatter trajectory and less wind push. Here's a strong example. A standard 250-grain Lapua Senior GB 488, very low drag bullet, typically runs about 3,200 feet per second at the muzzle. And under optimal conditions, it can stay supersonic out to around 1,500 meters. That kind of performance keeps things consistent at long range. And it's a big reason military and law enforcement snipers have leaned on it. Real-world use has also reinforced that reputation. In December 2024, a Ukrainian Special Forces sniper, call sign Lektar, reportedly hit a Russian soldier at a distance of 2,690 meters. He used a Finnish Sako M10 rifle chambered in 338 Lapua Magnum. I'm a facts guy, so I'll say it this way. That shot was reported as a national record for Ukraine, and it highlighted what the cartridge can do at extreme range. It was also reported as a first-round hit, which points to two things at once: the shooter's skill and the cartridge's inherent accuracy when everything comes together. All right, that's the lineup. 6.8 Western, 300 PRC, 6.5 PRC, 7mm PRC, 6.5 Creedmoor, and 338 Lapua Magnum. If you've been around long-range shooters for any length of time, you already know this truth. The most accurate caliber depends on the job: your rifle, your ammo, your dope, and your environment. But if you're looking for a short list that actually performs when the distance gets real, these are the cartridges that consistently show up and do work. Now, I want to hear from you. Which one of these have you personally run out past 1,000 yards? And what load was giving you the best consistency? Drop it in the comments. I read those. And it helps everybody watching learn faster without wasting money on guesswork. If you got value out of this breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss the next one. Stay safe, stay sharp, and I'll see you right back here on the Armory.